Well, we're sitting today with Elder Joy Southall and Elder Jafina Hall, and I think they have an incredible story to tell. Theirs is a piece of Northwest history, and not just Northwest history. Theirs is a piece of Adventist history, women's history, and Black history. And so today, I just want to thank you for coming out and agreeing to share your story. And all history stories have a beginning. And so I want to get to that piece and just talk to you a little bit about how you came to be in the Northwest. There weren't very many Black people in the Northwest at the time you came out here. So let's back it up before you came here and kind of figure out how this all came together. So Elder Southall, can you tell me a little bit about where you grew up and what that was like?
Yeah, I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. I was the first child of Adventist mom and dad. I was a third generation Seventh-day Adventist, and I started grade school when I was 5. I had to go across town to get to the church to go to grade school. No one would do that now, but my mom did. And I always went to Adventist school throughout my education experience.
So you went to academy and for grade school and high school?
I went to grade school to 10th grade in the Ephesus Junior Academy in Jacksonville, Florida. Then I went from 10th grade to 12th grade to the Oakwood Academy in Huntsville, Alabama. 2 years at college at Huntsville, and then to Walla Walla College.
Okay. So and Elder Hall, you have a similar story. You started out in the Adventist system, is that right? Tell us a little bit about your childhood.
I did indeed. And as Elder Southall has already said, I was the oldest of 5 brothers and sisters. And my parents were Adventist Christians. I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana. And so that's where I started school. Started first grade in New Orleans. Then we moved to Dallas, Texas. I was in grades, I think 3 through 5 in Dallas, Texas. And then we moved to San Antonio, Texas. And I graduated from the 8th grade in San Antonio, Texas. All those years I attended the church school that was connected to the churches that we were attending at that time. When I got to the 9th grade, there was no 9th grade school for the Adventists to attend. So then my parents decided, we have some close friends in Dallas. I'll send you and your brother together to Dallas, Texas. And so I went to Dallas and I attended 9th and 10th grade in Dallas. Well, that was as far as that school went, was the 10th grade. So we had another issue to work around. About that time was when I received a visit. And I received a visit from it's now called Southwestern University, but it was then Keene. It was the school in Keene, and I can't even remember what it was called. But a gentleman came out, and he wanted to let me know that it was okay now for me to attend their school.
Would that have been Southwestern Union?
Yes.
Okay.
And that was the academy. It was okay now for me as a Black person to attend their school. First of all, I didn't want to be the first to attend, so I wasn't too interested. And then his second comment was, but you know, there is an academy in Huntsville, Alabama called Oakwood Academy. And you just might be interested in checking out some information regarding Oakwood Academy. Well, I knew that I had planned to go to Oakwood for college. And I really didn't want to go to Oakwood Academy and college, although there were a lot of black students that did that. My friends told me that some of them were going to Pennsylvania to Pine Forge Boarding Academy. Now, mind you, I'm in Texas, right? Pennsylvania is a long way away. But my parents were so consecrated and dedicated to serving the Lord, and they felt that Christian education was vital. And so even though I kind of wanted to go to the public school where I was living, they said, no way, it's not happening. So since I had a couple friends that were going to Pine Forge, I begged my daddy to let me go to Pine Forge. He consented, and I went about 1,000 miles away for the 11th grade. And I was there for the 11th and the 12th grade, and that's where I graduated from, Pine Forge. And at that time, it was called Pine Forge Institute. Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah. It sounded like a parole, a children's school for convicts or something. But they've since changed it. Yeah, they've since changed it to Pine Forge Academy. And I was there for 2 years, graduated, loved it. And Pine Forge, I still, anytime I see anybody from Pine Forge, we automatically connect.
That's awesome. So both of you went to a boarding academy for high school.
For 10th grade, 10th
yeah.
and 11th grade.
And so,
11th and 12th grade.
So I'd like to talk about that just a little bit. What was that experience like? Because now you're not home with mom and dad anymore. You're off, and most of us, for the most part, we don't leave home till it's time to go to college or the military. Mm-hmm. So now you're leaving home, and this is not in 1980 or 1990 anything. This is
no 1950s.
1950s leaving home, going to a boarding school. Elder Southall, what was that like?
At age 15, I went from Jacksonville to Huntsville on the Trailway bus, and up through Macon, Georgia. I mean, it was just, I went by myself.
Wow. And
I didn't have any trouble. And I was trying to remember who picked me up from the bus station to take me out to Oakwood. I can't remember who that was. I thought it was a ball. It was really good. I worked in the laundry in the mornings and went to to classes in the afternoons at Oakwood Academy. It was good. It was good. I didn't, now looking back on it, I wish I could have maybe stayed home a little bit longer. But at that time, it was okay because my mother had a goal that her children would attend Oakwood. And there were some other people in the church whose children went, and she wanted her children to have the best Christian education they could possibly have. And in her mind, that was it. It was good. We lived in a dorm called, I can't remember the name of it, but it was Henderson Hall, that's right. It was an old dorm. And we would get so noisy in there that Miss Wade, the mother of the hall, the director, she would turn the lights out. And then I think she would go to fall asleep and forget to turn them back on. And so I know for a fact that the Lord was there with us the whole time, because I think that building probably would have gone up like tinder. It was wood, but it was a wonderful experience. I had a really good time there at Oakwood at Oakwood Academy.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because I think people in 2020, our young people now, don't understand what community was like for African Americans back then in the 1950s, and how far we have kind of veered off course from that sense of community. Can you talk to, and both of you, tell me a little bit about what was life like at the academy, at Pine Forge and at Oakwood? Was there a deeper sense of community? Was there a deeper sense of connecting that you don't see present in society today?
I think we all connected because we had a common bond We were all youngsters, actually, and we lived in this community. And another thing was about our hair. You know, we had to get our hair done, which means you had to get it straightened. So somebody would straighten your hair, and then you would put it up in rollers. And so, you know, and the other thing about Henderson Hall, it didn't have individual showers. So how we got a shower was we stopped up the sink and let the sink run over, and then we would just bathe like that.
Wow.
And then the bad thing to do was if Miss Wade came to the dorm, we would turn around and show her our nakedness. We were bad.
Yeah. But as far as your interactions with the other students, do you think you all were closer then than our young people are today?
I think we were, because I don't think any of us were wealthy. We were all probably from relatively poor families, and families were willing to make a sacrifice to send you to school like this. A lot of girls from Mississippi that had probably come into the church under Elder Cleveland. And so I think it was a real sense of being together and working together. I liked it.
Yeah. Elder Hall, what about you? What was Pine Forge like when you went there? How did it differ from where you left? And what was it like going there, probably not knowing anyone?
I did know a few, yes. I did have some friends, and we're all in our old age still very close friends. My parents took me to Pine Forge and dropped me off. I tell you, you know, coming up in a Christian home where you always had worship in the home and you always studied your Sabbath school lesson and all, and I thought, you know, I am going to this Christian academy. I am really gonna have to be good. I know everybody is studying their Sabbath school lesson every day and doing this and this. And it was such an eye-opener for me to realize that they were young people from different homes, different backgrounds. Everybody didn't come from the same background that I did. And the Sabbath school lessons? No, not very many were studying the Sabbath school lesson. But we bonded as a family. We lived at Pine Forge. I lived in the dorm for the upperclassmen, and that was called Manor House. And later on, I found out that Pine Forge was a place where the Underground Railroad actually was there. And Manor House now has been established as a historic site because of the history. But we had no idea about that at the time. We had 3 levels, first floor, second floor, third floor. And we had 1 bathroom on each floor. And on Fridays, you would sign your name up for when you wanted to get in the bathroom and get cleaned up for the Sabbath. It was very interesting. You couldn't just run in and take a bath anytime you got ready. And I came from a home that was a lot different. We had to make a bath every day. We would plead with Dad, and Dad would say, no, you've got to take a bath. So this was really different for me, but this is what we had to do. And we had an average of 3 to 4 students in a room. And so we really bonded together. When anybody got a box from their parents, everybody came into the room and gathered around, and they shared everything we had received from home. We had good music. We had wonderful services on Sabbath. As Joyce said, she worked, I worked also. I worked in the library. I wanted to work in the kitchen. I wanted to work in the laundry. Those were the 2 places that paid the most money, but all the students tried to get in there. So I got into the library, and I think I made 35 cents an hour. It was something like that. But we had a wonderful time. We had banquets. I remember the quartet from Oakwood came through. They gave a program for us, and we really had a wonderful time, and we did a lot of skating as an activity. That was the big thing, was skating. So it was an enjoyable experience, even though I did miss my parents a lot. But it was enjoyable, and I felt that I did grow spiritually.
At Oakwood, we were more well paid than you. We made 50 cents.
Okay. Okay.
So you finish Oakwood Academy, you finish Pine Forge. What came next?
Freshman year in college.
Okay.
And that was quite an experience. Because I think, if I remember correctly, I lived off campus that year. But I still had to take Bonehead English. Anybody remember? Anybody in here had to take Bonehead English? That's because you didn't know what to do up from
I
down.
was fortunate and I didn't have to take Bonehead. Sometimes I wish I had.
Yeah, I had to take Bonehead English.
So say a little bit more about Bonehead English.
Bonehead English taught you about the grammar, punctuation, how to spell. And I can remember one boy wrote on the board, Jack bought some beans. Jack was spelled correctly. Bought was B-O-T, some S-U-M, beans. That was Harry Smith.
I have to tell you something.
And so, it taught you how to write, because Dr. Dykes, who was one of the first graduates from, I think it was Radcliffe, or was it Harvard? Or
I think it was Harvard.
Harvard, yeah. Mm-hmm. She would give you, in a minute, she'd give you an F-.
Wow.
I got some of those. She was.
To get her PhD.
Yeah, she was. She was the first Black woman. She taught at Howard University, and then she went to Oakwood, and that's where she stayed.
And she was the first Black woman to get her PhD from Harvard, or
it was Harvard, or it was one of those really higher institutional learning.
Those Ivy League schools.
Yes.
Yes.
So, what did you think of it? So it probably wasn't as big of a transition moving from Oakwood Academy to Oakwood College.
It wasn't, because we had, being on the campus with the college, you got a lot of things that the college people got. And so, because we ate with them in the cafeteria, we just didn't go to classes with them. And I think our graduation, if I remember correctly, was at the same time the college graduation was. So we were behind them.
Mm-hmm.
Elder Hall. So you graduate from Pine Forge and had to make that move.
Had to make that move and went directly from Pine Forge to Oakwood College. And that was the first time that I was separated from my brother. My brother and I had never been separated before, but that was our first time that we were apart. I had always wanted to be a nurse. And so I went to Oakwood to take the pre-nursing. And one of the reasons I went to Oakwood was because both of my parents had attended Oakwood. And so I wanted to follow suit and go to Oakwood also. I just wanted to mention one thing here about Joyce taking the Bonehead English. Her teacher was Miss Emanuel, and Miss Emanuel is related to our charter members here, brother and sister Emanuel. They were related. I just wanted to make that note for Sharon Church.
And she was a character. She was a character. She didn't mind, boy, you better get that. I mean, she was really, really, and did you ever have her for a teacher?
I did not.
She was something else.
So talk about your majors. So when you went to Oakwood, What was the plan?
I was going to be a teacher
Okay.
until I realized that I had to teach math. And math is not my strong suit. Now, what made me think that I wasn't going to need math in nursing, I don't know. Because I guess I was 17. I didn't know the difference. And, but after that first year, I realized that probably wasn't good for me. So I changed my major, which was really news to my mom. She just couldn't understand why I would change my mind. Because, now remember, she's got 7 kids. And here I am going to spend an extra year in college because I've changed my major. But I did it anyway. And probably didn't think too much about what I was putting them through. I don't know. And then I went ahead and started with the pre-nursing at my second year.
Elder Hall?
You know, I always wanted to be a nurse. I always said from the time I was a little child that I wanted to be a nurse. And my brother had said he wanted to be a doctor. And so I said, okay, I'll work for you. When you become a doctor, I'll be your nurse in your office. But he never hired me. But anyway, I think one of the reasons I wanted to be a nurse, you know, my mother wanted to be a nurse. And my mother had applied to be a nurse at the nursing school on the East Coast, and I can't think of the name of it. It was connected with AUC.
New England?
New England SAN.
Yeah.
Yes, she had applied there. But at that time, they were not accepting blacks into the program. And so she was not able to get in to be a nurse. And I think that was one of the things that influenced me as I grew up, that I want to be a nurse because my mother wanted to be a nurse.
So you fulfilled her dream and yours.
And my own dream, yes. And I went to Oakwood, took the pre-nursing program there at Oakwood. Oakwood at the time did not have the clinical nursing program.
Nope.
All you could do was take the prerequisites that were needed to get into the nursing school per se. So I took the classes that were needed. You could take them in 1 year or you could take them in 2 years. I wanted to hurry up and get this over with, so I took it in 1 year. And then I applied to, it was called Columbia Union College at that time, but it's now called Washington Adventist University. And I had all the prerequisites that were required, but when I got the letter said that I wasn't classified as a junior. And so because I'm not classified as a junior, I'm not able to be admitted or accepted.
So you would have had to have been a junior at Oakwood in order to apply to their program.
Yes.
No matter the fact that you've already taken all the classes that they require.
Correct.
Interesting.
So then they told me to reapply the following year. I thought, oh my God. I was really, one time I was applying to go to take some classes, some further classes, not too long ago actually. And they asked me in the application, what is one of your most traumatic experiences? That's what I wrote down as my most traumatic experience, because that was traumatic for me. And I think one reason it was so traumatic is this is a Christian school, and I'm thinking prejudice is being displayed here at one of our Christian schools. And I just didn't understand. And I cried for days because I just knew that I was going to be accepted. I had the credits that were needed. I had the GPA that was needed. I just knew that I was going to be accepted. And I cried for days. And then finally I said, Dad, how can this be? How can this be? I even began to lose a little bit of faith at that point. And I remember he put his arms around me and he just said calmly, we live in a sinful world.
Yes.
This is what your father told you.
That's what my dad said. We're
Yeah.
living in a sinful world. He didn't try to talk about the school. He didn't lambast them at all for the decision. He just said, we're living in a sinful world. And you know, right now, today, that statement means a lot to me, because a lot of what is happening to us, a lot of everything we've experienced that's not of the Lord is because we're living in a sinful world.
And Elder Southall, you had a touch of rejection in the process of trying to get into nursing school as well.
It was a big touch because I had done 2 years at Oakwood and I was ready to go. At the time, I did not know the difference between a diploma school and a degree school of nursing. If I had gone to Hinsdale Hospital School of Nursing in Illinois, I think it's near Chicago, I would have gotten a diploma. But the Lord made it so that I was able to get my bachelor's at Walla Walla College. But I wish I had kept the letter that told me that I was turned down because they already had one black student that was from their union. I guess that was Lake Union. And that was all they were going to take. And they suggested that I stay at Oakwood and take another year of college.
So they had enough black students with their one. And so no matter what your qualifications were, or what your GPA was, or what classes you'd taken, they weren't interested in you.
No, they weren't interested in me, and I believe that my grades were good enough, and I think that I had all of the classes, the chemistry, the anatomy, physiology. I had all of those, and I had some of the subjects from my elementary education, that I was going to take. So I was ready to go. I was ready to go to college, and it was very disappointing to have that said.
Now, you didn't happen to keep a copy of that letter,
No.
did you?
You know what? I wish I had.
I know.
At 21, you're probably not really at 19. What was I, 19 or 20? You don't think it too straight.
Yeah.
And that would have been a wonderful thing to have had.
I think so. Elder Hall, I take it you didn't keep yours.
I didn't, and I too wish that I had. But you have to understand that every student that went to Oakwood with a nursing major realized that they had to apply at one of these other schools, and they always told us, hurry up and get your application in, because the chances are slim.
So what other options were there at the time? I mean, it seems like you have a very small amount of nursing schools, and then if they're only taking 1 or 2 black students at the time, were there any other options at all?
There weren't any, for me, at least I didn't know of any other Christian options. I did consider going to Florida A&M University that would have given me a degree, but I didn't get too far on that because then I found out I was going to go to Walla Walla.
And that's what we'll kind of transition to in just a second.
But you could have left high school and gone to like AUC, Union College, any of those schools, any of our schools. You could have just gone directly and skipped Oakwood, and that probably would have gotten you in much easier.
You think so?
Were there
I
challenges, to your knowledge, were there challenges getting admitted to those other schools that you just mentioned?
Everybody that I know that went directly from high school to the other schools like Andrews,
Union.
Union, PUC, they seem to have gotten in without a problem, and then they just stay right there with the program.
I see.
I do know one lady that I've met in Atlanta. She had gone to Hinsdale, but that was before I got there, or maybe it was after I got after me.
So that Hinsdale back then was Hinsdale Sanitarium.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know where that is.
I've been there before.
Yeah.
Not as a patient.
Mm.
Not when they were a sanitarium.
And they were all sanitariums.
They were all sanitariums.
Which is interesting because that has a different connotation.
It does, doesn't it?
They were all sanitariums, including Portland.
Wow. So let's shift gears a little bit because you didn't get your first choice, but you still wanted to go to school.
Yes.
And now I've heard you mention Walla Walla. How did that happen?
You know what? I don't remember how it all happened per se, but I do know that Mrs. Stafford, who was the nursing counselor,
nursing.
yeah, she was the dean of nursing for us, and from what I understood is that Mr. Hanson from Walla Walla College, now university, had wrote and wanted to invite some of us African Americans, I don't know what he called us, to come to Walla Walla because they hadn't had any nursing students there before.
No, nursing students of color.
Of color, yeah.
I see. And what year was this?
This was we started in 1958.
Okay. And so, Elder Hall, what was that jump like? And so you've been disappointed at this other place, so.
Yeah, and you know what? I had just decided that I would go back to Oakwood and I would just take some more miscellaneous classes. And that's what I did. I went back to Oakwood in the fall and I just took all kinds of different classes, none of them really related to the field, but I just took some different classes to just gain junior status in the eyes of the school. So I went home for Christmas vacation. I'm there enjoying myself with my family. And I get a call from the dean of nursing from Oakwood, Mrs. Stafford, who Joyce mentioned. She happened to have been in California at a meeting for nursing administrators for the schools.
Oh, okay.
And at that meeting, she was talking to the dean of nursing at Walla Walla, who was Miss Stratton. Her name was Miss Ann Stratton. And as they were talking, Miss Stratton said, you know, we need another Black student because the student that we had accepted has decided not to come. And we need a roommate for the other student because they had accepted the two.
So they, just so I'm clear, they had accepted 2 Black students. One decided not to come. So you have 1 Black student. So you're certainly not gonna, is the thinking, we're not gonna room a white student with a Black student, so we need another Black student to come take that other bed in that room.
Yeah.
That was my thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it was theirs too.
Okay, that's it.
Because it was a new thing.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so how did that play out?
Well, I thought, well, I never thought about going that far. I really didn't know much about the Pacific Northwest at all. All I knew primarily were the regional conferences and the schools that were in the regional districts.
Right.
And so I talked to my dad and discussed it and said, well, what do you think, Dad? And he said, well, Fina, that was my nickname. Well, Fina, if you want to go, he said, it's okay. It's okay. Now, mind you, most of my stuff is still at Oakwood, right? Because I just came up for Christmas vacation. So anyway, I went ahead and made plans. I called back and talked to Miss Stafford and told her that I would come. And of course, she says, I think this is Christmas vacation. Classes start at the end of Christmas vacation. So you have to get here right away. And so I made plans to go, and I went on the train. I came here on the Portland Rose, and
That's a whole other story.
asked my roommate at Oakwood if she would mind packing up my things for me. I know, she was so sweet. If she would mind packing up my things for me and sending them to Walla Walla.
Wow.
Because I'm not coming back.
Wow. So what was that transition like? I mean, you're Elder Southall, you're all of a sudden you're just going to Walla Walla.
Well, see, I'm the student that wasn't going to come to school.
Wait, so you're the one that changed your mind?
I'm the one that changed my mind. I was going to get married.
Now you hear the whole story.
Okay, so now, lay this out for us. So you've decided. Hinsdale said no, thank you.
But Walla Walla accepted me.
So you applied to Walla Walla. They said, come on out. And so you got your acceptance letter. You're going to go there starting in January.
And I was home. We left Oakwood at the end of spring quarter, semester, or whatever. So I was home from that time until it was going to be time to go to Walla Walla. And, I'm not even sure I love that person. But I don't know, I guess it sounded okay at the time that I would get married, and he lived in New York and he had a good job, and so that's what I was gonna do. I think my self-esteem probably was not very good at that time. So Mrs. Stafford called and told me that she knew that I had turned down the position, and she said, "You can get married anytime. You should not let this opportunity go by. You will never get this opportunity again." And from that point on, it must have been hearing her say that my whole way of thinking turned around. I wrote the guy a letter. I did, well.
His name wasn't John, was it?
No, his name wasn't John, but okay. I did write him a letter. Well, you gotta remember, this is 1957.
Gotcha, I'm with you.
And so, how do you get, I think we still had a party line, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, but I wrote him a letter and told him that I was gonna go to school and I wasn't gonna get married. And, I'm guessing he was really hurt, I don't know, but at that point, I didn't care because I was on my way to Walla Walla. And, not having any money, we went the most economical way we could, the Greyhound bus. Well, see, I was used to traveling that way because that was how I got between Oakwood and Jacksonville. So, and I can't remember if it was 3 days and 4 nights or 4 nights and 3 days, but anyway, it was a long 3,000 miles to Portland. And I remember I got here, and the first thing I can remember seeing was the Montgomery Ward sign and the sign of that reindeer or Rudolph or whatever that is, that stag on that sign that I remember coming into Portland. And we went all the way up to Highway 90 from Chicago and came across that way. And, I used to think, oh, the Marlboro man is going to come over one of those hills, because it was very hilly.
So you actually came past Walla Walla to Portland, and then, I'm sorry, are we talking about Walla Walla out in Walla Walla, Washington, or the nursing program in Portland?
The nursing program, that was where you started. You started at the nursing program in Portland.
Okay.
And then the last 6 months you spent up at the college getting the last part of whatever the other courses that you had to have.
Okay.
If you had started at Walla Walla College, you would have taken your pre-nursing classes
there
up at Walla Walla. But since we had already completed that, Then we came
We
straight
came,
to
we
Portland
came to the nursing
for the
school.
clinical.
Mhm.
Before you were thinking about nursing schools, had either one of you ever heard of Walla Walla?
I think I had seen it in the review or something, you know, like the name of it. I didn't truly really know exactly where Oregon was. I think I had a rudimentary knowledge in my head about this. There was a state called Oregon. And I think I had heard of Portland, Oregon at some time, but that's all I knew.
And so one of the things that I noticed that we have today is our ability to communicate is
Amazing.
unbelievable. Back then, how often did you talk to your parents? How often did you call back home and touch base with those, family and friends? There's a lot of people take that for granted nowadays because I can call any of my friends right now and get a hold of them. What was that part like?
I talked to my parents once a week, and it was on Sunday, and not for very long. And my dad always was very conscious of the phone bill. But Sundays were the days that were cheaper. And so I would call on Sunday and talk to them, but I did a lot of letter writing.
I did too. I didn't talk to my folks very often.
So when you arrived in Portland, what did you think? Culture shock?
Culture shock, because my exposure to Caucasian people was minimal, like clerks in the store. Because we were really, in Florida, we were really separated from the whites. So we didn't do that. And so it was a culture shock for me.
A pretty big culture
It was, it really was.
I imagine the same thing coming from New Orleans and then San Antonio.
Exactly.
Same thing.
It was. And even up in Pennsylvania, we were together as a black unit on the boarding school campus. And so our interaction was minimum. Yes, it was.
I think the only white person on that campus at Oakwood was an old man who was in charge of some part of construction. And I was the only white person that I saw.
So you arrive at Portland and there's a few more white people than you're used to being around.
Yeah, a white lady, she was the registrar. She picked me up from the station and got me settled. And did I get here or did you get here first? I can't remember whether you got here first or I got here first.
You did, because I was late due to the fact.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they put Hattie, which is the other young lady that was with us. They put Hattie, Jafina, and I in this. What kind of room was that? It was a big room.
Oh, wait. So you end up with the three of you.
And they had only
because you changed your mind, decided not to get married, and they've already invited your replacement.
Yeah.
And here I am.
But that shows me God's hand. Because they didn't have to accept me. They had a class of 20. And they were ready to go. And when I called and asked if I could be accepted, and they accepted me, then now the class is 21. But they did.
So how long was that program?
That was 3 years, I think it was. It led you to a Bachelor of Science degree.
Yeah, we came in 58 and graduation was 61.
Mm-hmm.
Did you, when you came, did you think you were going to stay?
I had no doubt about it because I was too far away from home to go back. And I didn't have any money.
So you wanted to stay in Portland.
I wanted to stay.
I mean, beyond graduation, was it your plan to stay?
I don't know if I thought about that because my mother wanted me to come back and work with, I think his name was Dr. Cox down at the Florida Sanitarium. That was her goal for me to do that, and I didn't do that. I stayed and did my own thing. But I don't know. Sometimes I think I'm not a very deep thinker. I don't know that I thought that far in advance. But I did know that I liked Portland. I can remember one of the things I really liked about it, I had never seen camellias, the flower camellias, and they were blooming in January and February. It was a mild winter. I don't think we had any snow at all. So I liked.
You liked it?
I liked it.
Elder, what about you? Did you think you were going back to Texas?
Not initially. I remember the dean of nursing from Oakwood told me, now be sure and take your raincoat, bring a raincoat, and be sure and bring an umbrella. And I thought, now that's odd, because in my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to some place where there's lots of snow, and I don't know why. And even today, people, if I go visit, people will say, oh, it snows a lot out there, doesn't it? And we really don't get that much snow, right? But in my mind, I'm thinking I'm going someplace with a lot of snow, and she's telling me to bring an umbrella and bring a raincoat. So I said, okay. We got here, and we were greeted by this couple. We call them Mother and Daddy Emmanuel. They greeted us and just kind of took us in as their family. They came into the dormitory every Sabbath, picked us up, and brought us to church.
Brought us to Sharon.
And so we began to merge into relationships within the church body with other people of color. And I felt very comfortable here. And then as time went on, I met a man here.
We all did.
And so I never left.
I met one too.
So that kind of solidifies it though. You meet a man, and he's not talking about moving to Florida or Texas. You're staying here. So how was that experience of nursing school? Did you enjoy it?
Yes,
I did. I think we often talk about our comrades in nursing school. I often wondered if they had been schooled, if they had had any classes saying, now we're going to have some Black students here. I want you to treat them really kindly, because they treated us very, very cordially. We had an awesome relationship, and it wasn't long after I was in this 3-room area that I moved out and roomed with one of the other Caucasian students and left Joyce and Hattie to themselves.
Yeah.
It was a room built for 2 though, originally, right? Or the size of your rooms.
The first one actually was quite large, and I don't remember how those beds were.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
It was different than
It was
any of the other
some
rooms.
kind of a different room.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know what that dorm was. That dorm something else before it was a dormitory? I don't remember. It was a great yellow building that's on the corner of 60th and Yam Hill. And,
Is it still there?
My son told me he thought it was torn down. I haven't been that way for
The
a
last
long
time I went by there, it was still there. It was being remodeled, but the last time it's right across the street from Mount Tabor Church. Yeah. I think the building was there for a long time because they've had other nursing students there, and the nursing program at Walla Walla had gone on for years prior to us being there.
It was, I remember that we had, I think it was 5 or 6 Canadians. And I wonder if their perception of Black people might have been a little bit different from the Caucasians. But I don't remember any of our fellow students being, I don't remember feeling anything as far as racial went with them.
Okay.
Remember we went with Arlene and Urvella, and we went up to Mount Tabor and we made chapatis on this little fire out of the. Their parents were missionaries in India and Pakistan, and so they were probably used to people of color more than some of the others were.
I just recently posted on Facebook. I had put a picture of myself and my 2 daughters. And I said, my very best friends. and Calvin Demnich, who is one of the husbands of one of our nursing class, he sent me back a text right away and said, in addition to me and Irvy. And that's just, I mean, it's been umpteen years since we graduated, and that relationship still goes.
So, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. You were the first two black students to attend the nursing program?
There were three of us.
I'm sorry, the two of you, and then
A girl named Hattie. She left the area and she came back south.
okay, for the very first ones.
Well, Jafina and I had a little conversation about that. I believe that we were.
Okay.
I don't know. I think they were, because they actually, solicited somebody to come.
All right. And
Now, why he thought it was necessary to have somebody come, have some black students come, I don't know. I just think it was the hand of God.
Oftentimes that is. And we don't understand why it's happening, and then how these, can you imagine, you couldn't have planned what actually happened.
That's right.
You couldn't have.
There's no way.
There's no way.
There's no way you could line that up. I mean, and you think of all the different opportunities for something different to happen, or you to go or make a different decision, or go a different place, and yet you ended up here.
Very, very true. And
so God saw you through the Walla Walla portion.
Yeah.
What happened next?
Well, I graduated in 61. I took my state boards and I passed them. Hallelujah, praise the Lord, because I'm not the brightest person on earth. So, but and at that time, now they take them on the computer. But at that time, we were down at the Oregon State Building downtown, and all of us were sitting there in these, with pencil and paper, and you had 5 tests, 5 different systems that you had to have a test on. And I just was wondering if I was going to be the only one that didn't pass, and praise the Lord, I didn't. I did pass. And I worked at Portland Avenue. It was called Portland Sand at the time. I worked there for a while.
Portland
Sanitarium and Hospital. Mm-hmm. I worked there for a while, and then because if you worked there for 1 year, that would erase all of your student debt that you had. So, but they paid you too. So, and then I got married, and I had my daughter. Now that was probably not it was kind of dark days for me, but God had something else in mind for me, because when I was pregnant with my daughter, I stopped going to church and just wasn't doing it. And one day after my daughter was born, I got a call from Mother Emanuel. We were talking about the Emanuels. And she said, well, get ready, because I'll be by to pick you up for church. And that did it, because then I have never, slacked off again.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome that she felt that she could call me and tell me, and I would be ready, and I did it. And I am so happy that I did that.
She'd probably send her husband outside with that voice of his to yell and tell you to come out of the house.
No, she didn't have to. I think I just needed that push of somebody caring, and from that point on, it was a good deal.
Good. Elder Hall, how about you? So you graduated, and?
So let me tell you, my story is not quite the same as Joyce's. I did graduate. I graduated 10 years later, 1971. I got married, and every time I said, okay, next year I'm going to go back to school. And then it seemed like I was expecting again. Well, after this one, I'm going to go back to school. Well, in the meantime, I did go back and take I worked as a CNA for a while, And then I thought, I shouldn't be working as a CNA. I really need to go back, at least be an LPN, because they get to do a little bit more. So I went back to school at Portland Adventist Hospital and took the LPN course. I think it only, anyway, I took the LPN course, became an LPN, and then started working again. And people started asking me to do all these things on the unit, and I said, if I'm going to do all that, then I'm going to finish up and get my RN, okay? So then I talked to my husband about it, and he said, sure, if you can get it worked out, that's fine. I called up the nursing, I called up the Walla Walla, I called their curriculum department and told them that I had been there. I hadn't been there since so-and-so and so-and-so time, but can I come back in? And they checked things out, called me back, I think a couple of weeks or so later, and said, yes, that was fine, I could come back. And so I went back to school. I had 4 children at this point. I went back to school, taking classes. Of course, they were all right here. My husband had to buy into this because I had to have the kids someplace. So we checked with his family across town, and they would take care of the kids during the week and help me with the children and all of that. Oh my goodness, this is bringing back all kinds of flashbacks. But I can remember having to be at the hospital at 6:30 in the morning. I can remember getting up early, fixing breakfast, putting it on the table. My oldest boy was about 7. It took me 2 years. He might have been 8. And I would fix the food, put it on the table. The 2 younger children I would take across the street to the neighbor, and then I'd tell Michael, this is your breakfast. Now be sure you wake up by so-and-so and so you can get ready for school. Because my husband was a baker, so he was already gone to work. He wasn't there to be with them in the early mornings. Anyhow, we got through all of that. And it just so happened that I ended up graduating 1971, okay? I was supposed to graduate 1961. So when you have alumni reunions, it's the reunions of the ones. So I'm back again.
Yeah.
I'm right back again with the group that I should have been with in 61. And so I just said the Lord worked it all out. And the year after I graduated, the school changed the curriculum. And so I would not have been able to go back in the way I did at that time.
You would have had to start all over?
I would have had to start all over. It was
Wow.
would have been a different curriculum. God was in the plan,
This
is
is-
all that I can say.
This is where people usually say, look at God.
Look at God.
Look at God, amen.
Say that.
Yeah. So now, did the 2 of you lose touch with each other, say, like after you graduated in 61? Or what? Were you? I'm sorry. Were you
We were both
going,
at this church.
going to this church, correct? So
Right.
you were always in touch.
Yes.
We were always
Okay.
in touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So 71 graduate, 61 graduate. You're off into your careers and family and everything else. If you had to say to someone to your 1957 self, if you had to give your 1957 self some advice, what would it be?
Never give up. That's what I would say. Never give up. And I tell people now, and I tell my children, you can do it. You can do anything you put your mind to.
Mm-hmm. Just don't quit.
Don't quit.
Yeah.
That's right. Don't quit. And I heard somebody say that recently, some black. Was it John Lewis? No, it wasn't John Lewis. But it was somebody in the political world that struggled. Never give up. Don't quit.
I'm not sure what I would say, because I think I just rolled along and God just took me along, and then I strayed off, but he still loved me and put me back on the right track. So what would I say?
I know you weren't expecting that question, so it's one that makes you, what do you, to think about, and I'm trying to reference that point in your life where you experienced that disappointment of you getting rejected by the school you think you're going to go to.
I think I just
God
put
has
that.
a plan.
Yeah,
You can say that.
yeah. God has a plan,
has a plan.
and He just took care. And I think I forgot them as far as my education went, because coming here, it was so full.
How do you mean?
The education, doing what we needed to do, working on at that time, nursing students did a lot of the nursing in the hospitals. And so we were busy, and then we could even work for pay. They would pay us to work. And so I was busy. So I don't think I really dwelt back on what they said too much, because I felt accepted. I didn't feel like anybody gave me any unjust opportunities. I felt like I earned, that I earned what I got, and that God was just carrying me along.
So when you looking back, sometimes it's really easy to see God's hand.
Mm-hmm.
When you were in the middle of it, did you see God's hand?
Of the education?
When you're in the middle of the most difficult parts, or the most boring, mundane, just one day feeds into the next part, did you see God's hand then? Because a lot of times people don't see it when they're in it, and it's not till they look back where they see it.
I saw God's hand the most when I was in the part where I was raising my children alone. If I had not had an opportunity to go to school, to be a nurse, to be able to really raise my children pretty much by myself as far as income goes, I knew that God had been with me all along, way back. Because there were technically, I was really struggling. It was a really rough time in my life. I can remember part of just having the house and keeping the house going. I just had the house. It needed a lot of work and everything. And I had the television I had for my children was, one television had the sound and one had the picture.
Hey, we did what we had to do back in the day. So you had two televisions then?
I had two televisions. How about that? I can see them now over that right by that window with this rabbit ear coming out. So I have seen God's hand all along, and when I did end up getting divorced,
mm-hmm.
and the lawyer that I had said, because at that time the husband was supposed to pay for the divorce, the lawyer said to me, "You are very fortunate that you can handle it by yourself, because you're not going to get much from him."
Wow.
And I didn't.
And again, you saw the hand of God.
I saw the hand of God.
Yeah.
I saw the hand of God long before that. I saw the hand of God one time when it was icy. We were having an ice storm and my furnace went out. And I called my mother to because I don't know why I called her. She is in Florida. But I called her and she was going to pray for me. And as she started to pray for me, the furnace clicked on.
Mm-hmm.
And it stayed, it never went out again until after I got married to Hardin.
Wow. That's something else.
And it was like, before you call, I will answer. So, you know, I knew God was with me. And, you know, he told me, my mother told me, because she's still on the education kick. And my son went to first grade at a public school, and she said, he needs to be in church school. So I put both my children in church school. How I was going to do that, I don't know. But it worked. God is there all the time. I can just say, praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord. Hello?
I just wanted to say one thing that while I was at Walla Walla, after I was there for, let's see, when did I get rejected from that other school? Anyhow, while I was in school, I got a letter from Washington Adventist University. And it said, I hope that now you have completed your courses and are ready to be admitted to our school. And I was so excited to be able to give them a call and say, no, thank you. It's all taken care of. I'm already in school. That was a real blessing for me. And, you know, the other thing, I feel that even after I was out of school and I worked as a CNA, then I worked as an LPN, that all helped to enrich my knowledge of what those other entities, or how important those other entities are to the top level of nursing. You know, and I've always told people as I worked as an RN, we wouldn't be anything if we didn't have our CNAs, if we didn't have our LPNs,
Right.
which we don't have much of anymore. But it gave me a knowledge that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And so I appreciated that experience. And the other thing is, I always enjoyed nursing. I always enjoyed nursing. And I really felt that I was in the right field and that God had guided me to the right spots, the right places at the right time. And I'm just thankful.
So like a question I put to you, I'm going to put to you that I put to Elder Southall. When you were in the midst of the difficult times and the boring times, did you see God's hand then, or was it always looking backwards where you see his hand at work?
Oh, you know, it's kind of looking backwards, actually. I remember struggling when I went back to school. There were times I really wanted to give up. I mean, there were term papers that had to be due. There was reading that had to be done. There was clinical that had to be done. And I just thought, you know, I just think I'm gonna have to give up on this. But I remember writing, you can tell I'm a daddy's girl, right? I remember writing to my dad and I said, Dad, I just don't think I can take this anymore. I just can't take it anymore. I think I'm just gonna have to give up. And he said, before you know it, it's gonna be all over. He said, keep on pressing on. Before you know it, it's gonna be over. And then, you know, my poor parents, they were so excited. They drove all the way from Texas out here for my graduation up to Walla Walla, Washington.
That had to be an adventure.
That was an adventure.
For them.
And they had some car trouble on the way. Yeah, it was.
Wow.
But in looking back, I can see God's hand, but initially, sometimes it was so hard that I really didn't feel it at that point.
I think that's important for people to hear and understand that, when you're in the
midst of it.
you're in the middle of it,
Mm-hmm.
you're not necessarily gonna see God's hand. That's part of the challenge is that knowing that He's there even when you can't see Him.
When you can't see it, that's true.
But also knowing that when you look back, then you'll start to understand why He took you the path He took you on and the path He took you on.
That's right. That's right.
And by the way, my family drove from Florida to my graduation. And my dad probably went 50 miles an hour the whole trip.
But they had to be proud. I mean, both your families had to be extremely proud. I mean,
Yeah, because, my dad had like a 4th grade education. My mom had a 7th grade education. And now they've got somebody that's graduating from Walla Walla College,
Yeah, their first child.
The first child.
Yeah.
we probably couldn't have peeled the smiles off of their
No.
faces.
Mm-mm.
That's awesome. Anything else you'd like to talk about before we close?
I can't think of anything else that I want to talk about, but I do appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Well, the pleasure is all mine when I get to hear a story like this. This is, and I'm glad it's not just for us right here. Although I enjoyed in the moment with the 4 of us sitting here. I enjoy the intimacy of the moment of hearing these things. But in the broader scope, when people see this and they can understand, first of all, how blessed we are, and what people went through to achieve what so many people take for granted.
Yes.
Now that's important, because before we count the successes of my generation, I tell anybody, I'm not flying. I'm standing on the shoulders of people who came before me.
That's right.
If I'm up here in the air, it ain't because I did anything, but I'm resting on the shoulders of people like you who came ahead of us. And so people have to understand that none of us did any of these things in a vacuum. And if it weren't for people coming along and being willing to say, I'm going to go 3,000 miles from home, 2,000 miles from home, and go achieve this thing, and then go and do it, this generation, the next generation, would not have achieved what it has achieved.
That's true.
So this is a thank you for me,
Oh,
and everyone else. Thank you
More than welcome.
for sharing.
I just want to say one thing. There's another lady who is now deceased that was really, really special in our lives when we were nursing students. And her name is Mrs. Justine Bishop. Her son is Michael Bishop. You know
Okay, Michael from at YBS.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. His mother was such a stable force in helping us. She would come and pick us up and take us to our house just to eat dinner. She would come and pick us up and do our hair. All 3 of us on the same day. And she had 4 children.
Did she have 4 by then, or was it just 3? Anyway, she had children, babies.
Oh wow.
Yes, she had small children.
Yeah.
She had.
Yes, she did. She did have all 4 of them by then, and she'd come and get us.
Wow.
And
Yes.
she lived way southeast.
Yeah. So we had the Lord placed people in our lives when we were here to give us the strength, the confidence that we needed to maintain at that time.
Awesome. Excellent.
Yeah, he did.
Sure did.
Would you like to add anything else?
I would just like to say I'm thankful for the experiences that I've had, because in working with other people, and I work with a lot of other people that feel sometimes distraught, down in the dumps. I also went back to school, and I'm associate chaplain, And in that work, you're always trying to comfort somebody. But you can say, you can do this. You can do this. Even with my grandchildren, sometimes the grandchildren feel that, Grandma, I don't know why this is happening to me, such and such and such. You can give that extra encouragement to go on. So I appreciate what I've been through because it has helped me to be able to help somebody else.
Awesome. Thanks. How'd that feel? I'm not going to put you, I was going to put you through it one more time, but I'm not going to do that.